All right, we're now live. Welcome to Bill and Eamon's Bogus Hangout. We've got Doc Sheldon with us today. Doc, you want to tell us about what you've been up to?
Oh, trying to stay warm, recovering from overeating during the holidays, and getting back up to speed again. How about you?
I'm trying to get a little bit of relaxation. I didn't do too much this holiday season, but it was still pretty eventful. Uh, Probably stayed up way too late a few times and played too much of a tourist. But looking forward to a fun new year. Avoided making too many resolutions.
Yeah, to be avoided by like the plague.
I make a lot of resolutions during the course of the year. I don't need to make them at the year end because those are more likely ones that I probably won't follow.
Yeah,
It's like all the people who resolve to join a gym and work out, and they join a gym and end up never going.
yeah. It's an expensive resolution.
Yeah.
I got a lot of flack. My brother-in-law and I both joined a gym here locally about probably 3 years ago, and started going over there 3, 4 times a week, and spend a couple hours working out. And I enjoyed it, and it felt good. You know, they've got, oh God, I guess they got like 70 or 80 machines in there, different machines. So
Yeah.
there was very rarely did you have to waste any time waiting for a machine. Anyway, we get ready to go, and he always took a shower there and changed to street clothes, and I just came home in my gym clothes and showered here.
Yeah.
So while he was going in to change, I'd go out front and have a cigarette because I'd spent the last couple hours on a cigarette. And apparently, some of my family thought that was a little odd that I'm spending money and time to go get healthy, and then go stand out front and smoke a cigarette. They will.
Mm. Yeah, I've been trying to walk my way to fitness rather than working on exercise equipment. I did buy some resistance bands so I can do some of that at home.
Hmm. A buddy of mine and I, years ago when I was in San Diego, we went together on a Nautilus machine at we found it at an estate sale. And this thing, I mean, it was a full blown Nautilus, and it had a bunch of dead weights too, and barbells and whatnot. And the guy had a home gym, and we picked it up for $1,000. We split the cost, and he was single, and he had a house, so
Yeah.
we put it up in his garage, and he lived like 4 doors down from me, and spent a lot of time on that machine. You know, I was blown away though what those things cost new. Oh, you're talking stripped down about $4,800, and full blown, you're up over 10 grand.
Yeah.
They're nice, and you can work out every muscle you got. But I kind of like, I just soon do laps at the pool, before I drop 10 grand into a machine that's going to eat up half my garage.
Yeah. I'd rather drive down, you know, 3, 4 miles around the lagoon and look at all the birds and
Hmm.
plants and stuff like that. Take some pictures.
Yeah.
And walking will get you healthy.
I saw some folks couple of weeks ago. I was out on the balcony and I saw some folks, a group of them, going down the street in front of me. And the weirdest, you've seen the I don't know what it's called, but there's this walk that they used to do that was a very odd pace where you're almost in a semi-squatted mode and a very stretched gait and almost in a semi-squat. It looks odd, but supposedly it works out the lower back and the upper, the thighs real well. And these guys had done something, and apparently their gym leader had invested in them this idea. They would do like 3 steps of that, and then do a deep squat and go down almost to touching their leading knee and touching their trailing knee to the pavement, and then come back up and then do 3 more and then do it again. It looked like a family of ducks going down the road.
Is that like a CrossFit group, maybe?
Probably something along those lines, or maybe a yoga group or something. But I mean,
were you in the studio where they were pounding tires with sledgehammers?
Huh. That's a good way to catch one in the forehead on a bad bounce, eh?
Yeah.
Wow.
People do some interesting things.
Well, that's unfortunately those of us that work online spend an awful lot of time sitting behind a desk and not enough time getting some healthy exercise. And I don't have either the willpower or the desire to cut dramatically the amount of the type of food I eat. Okay, so I've just cut the amount, and I eat conservative. And I found it's odd. I used to sit down and I could pig out on a 16-ounce steak and a couple of baked potatoes and 2 or 3 sides, and walk away full, but not uncomfortably.
Yeah.
And now, a 6 or 8 ounce steak and 1 baked potato fills me up. So that's the way I've gauged my intake. But I just got accustomed to eating less, and I rarely eat breakfast. I usually eat 2 meals a day, mid and at night. Then I might have a snack late at night, but I don't have the desire or the willpower to stop eating red meat or.
I've made some changes. I've been logging what I've been eating, just to make sure I'm eating enough of the varieties and the vitamins and minerals I should be. I added seafood twice a week to my diet. So I'm eating like poke bowls. And I started eating fruit and oatmeal for breakfast. So it's a good way to start the day for me. It's something in me that helps me sit here and look. So I do eat breakfast. I do sometimes skip dinner. It's not a terrible thing.
I was getting a little bit of background noise. Are you getting it when I speak?
No, not really.
Oh, now you're clear. You were getting a lot of fuzz whenever you spoke, but now it's clear.
Hmm. So I was invited to go speak in Manchester in September
Cool.
to make a few trips across the Atlantic after last year, doing it twice. It's kind of fun.
Yeah. I've never been to Manchester. I had always been under the impression it was kind of a smallish city. I recently saw I was misinformed.
It's good sized, isn't it? Yeah.
I'd love to get to Brighton sometime. That's a good conference from what I've seen. The other one I'd really love to go to would be the big one in Adelaide.
Confirm 16147 075180. Confirm 16147 075180.
Sorry.
Confirm.
Whoops. What happened?
I mute myself.
Oh, I lost the window there for a minute.
Oh. Now you start recognizing the phone numbers of the people who spam you.
Are you getting those emails about we've got your password, we've filmed you watching porn, we're going to share it if you don't hit our Bitcoin account? I'm getting like a half a dozen of those a day.
Really?
Yeah. I've been seeing them for 3 or 4 weeks, I guess. And I see a lot of other people have been getting them too. But because of some exploit some time ago that exposed a bunch of passwords, the email starts out telling you, the email shows it's spoofing from your email address. But then they quote your password, and it's probably an old password that you actually had on that account, maybe 5, 6, 10 years ago, but you actually had that password, and they're saying that they infected your machine, that they filmed you on your webcam, that they've built a video showing what porn you were watching and what you were doing while you were watching it. They're going to send it to all your friends and family if you don't send them $637 to their Bitcoin account.
The first one of those I got, they wanted $133.
Oh, that's cheap.
Yeah.
Well, you probably weren't that entertaining.
The second one I got, they raised the price to like $600, but I've only gotten two, and they both included passwords that were like 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah.
That I only used once in one place. And it's like, okay, you feel like my Webmaster World password.
Yeah. I was doing some research.
My Webmaster World password? I'm scared.
I did some research last week on exploits and what exploits, big losses of data have occurred over the last. I think I went back as far as like 2008 or 2009, and there's a lot of them. They didn't all involve loss of passwords, but the majority did.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna do an article on it for SNC. It was kind of surprising.
See, like Yahoo gets, Yahoo was involved in one of those. It was quite a few people.
Well, let's see. We've got. I went back. 2008. You had MySpace, Stratfor, Last.fm, Dropbox, Tumblr, Kickstarter, Forbes, Black Hat World, Bitly, Patreon, Major Geeks, vBulletin, LinkedIn, Anti-Public Combo List, Exploitin, Discus, Online Spambot, River City Media, Elasticsearch Instance, You've Been Scraped, and Apollo. I haven't totaled up the numbers yet, but it's in the hundreds of millions of accounts that were nailed with passwords. And like I say, they weren't all involving lost passwords, but the majority did.
In Google Plus admitted that they've been hacked. Don't recall if they said any passwords were involved.
Yeah, I got to check that one out. That's not on my list.
That was their justification for closing down Google Plus. No.
The way I gathered this information, I went to haveibeenpawned.com and ran through all of my email accounts. And I've got like 15 different accounts and saw which ones had been owned and where. So I know I haven't got everything yet. I haven't even gone to Google to do a search for exploits. But and the interesting thing too I found, Bill, was the timeline. Back in 2008, when MySpace got hammered, I don't have a count there, but it did involve password losses. But it wasn't everything. They had a data breach, but okay, here, 360 million. I do have it. And then Stratfor in 2011 was 860,000 that had hashed passwords but no salt. And they lost, credit card details and everything else. I mean, they lost their entire database. But the interesting thing was, if you look at the exploits over time, they're getting worse, but they're getting smaller. So I don't know if that means that the security on some of these sites has tightened up to the point that they're able to catch an exploit early. They've suffered some loss, but they managed to clamp down on it before it gets their whole database. So there's more attempts, but less catastrophic data loss, which is encouraging.
Some places you expect to be really invulnerable to being hacked, like an Experian.
Yeah.
It's still get hacked.
I see others are commenting on the event page that they're having issue with the sound too. It's back for me as well.
Really?
You're not hearing it when I speak, eh?
No.
It sounds like almost like an echo. It's more like fuzz over your speech. And I'm hearing it when I speak as well. Testing, testing. I don't hear it when I speak now.
Okay, the headphones made a difference.
That's clear now, yeah.
Good. I have to start using these all the time.
Yeah, I've had to because I can't. My other alternative is the mic in my Logitech camera, and with speakers, it just feeds back and echoes.
I've got the same camera.
C920.
Not sure which model number it is. This is Logitech.
Yeah, I love this C920. I had it for about 3 years now. After going through 5 or 6 that were really crappy graphics or image, this one's pretty clear. What I want to do though is I want to fix up some sort of a switch. When I'm just sitting here working, I usually don't have my headset plugged in, and I have my speakers on. So if somebody calls, I'll hear the ringer over the speakers. So then I got to real quick plug in my headset and put that on to answer. And I'd like to have some sort of a switch, like an AB switch, where I can actually flick it over and connect the headset, at the touch of a finger. And I haven't been able to find anything that's going to let me do that.
I seem to remember something like that.
Well, it seemed like a simple thing for somebody to put together would be, just basically a USB connection that I plug my headset into with a switch on it to make the connection. Then my system will automatically recognize the headset and turn off the speakers. But I haven't been able to find anything. So if anybody out there listening knows of one, please ping me.
So, Doc, you were talking earlier before we went live about where you used to go to get news in the SEO industry.
Yeah, when I first started studying SEO, of course, I built a list of blogs and publications that looked like the sort of place I could follow and learn something. And a lot of those people were prominent SEOs, and to me, not knowing anybody, of course, prominence was established by how often I saw them active and commented on and mentioned. So I built a list of folks and some prominent names that I followed quite a bit, and you by pure coincidence were one of them. And over time, I found that some of those names, just the fact that they were active and talked about and mentioned a lot, did not mean they didn't have their head so far up their ass they get a nosebleed.
I used to save RSS feeds and use a feed reader and read through a lot of blogs every day.
Yeah, I did. I spent better than half my day every day for probably a year learning just that way, and it was helpful. It was educational, And of course, immediately the first thing I found out is, raise any question, and you can get 3 different opinions on it in a hurry. So then the next thing is try to figure out which one of them has enough credibility to believe, and that's a little tougher,
I still see things like that in Twitter.
Oh yeah,
where people are saying that they use TF-IDF to, and it's like if you raise the fact that they don't have access to the corpus of data that Google does on the use of terms,
makes a difference.
So it's not going to necessarily be helpful because those tool makers are estimating, they're guessing. they're using data that isn't really necessarily going to be that helpful.
Yep.
None of the people using these TF-IDF tools are telling you where they've gotten their information, their data.
Well, I'm sure that some of them would be very hesitant to give that up because it would destroy their credibility.
They're questionable in terms of credibility at this point anyway.
Well, yeah, to some of us, but to everybody, no. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist out there to understand when somebody says this is the way things are based upon our study of 300 people.
Yeah.
Okay, this does not a study group make.
Those people who blog that they're basing their study on 1.6 million blogs or something like that, it's kind of cartoonish anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, it's explain me, Lucy, just exactly how did you go about gathering that corpus?
It's like, okay, yeah, so the ideal number of words to use in a blog post is 2,385 based on a study of 1.6 million blog posts.
Uh-huh.
Right. So you averaged them what?
Well, unfortunately, regardless of how ridiculous the claim is, somebody will believe it. And somebody else will repeat it as gospel. My sister's next door neighbor's hairdresser's cousin said,
It's like the old myth about latent semantic indexing.
Mm-hmm.
People say latent semantic indexing just means that you're using synonyms. A machine does not know what a synonym is.
Nope. Right up there with sarcasm and irony,
Yeah. So an automobile is a car unless it's a railroad car.
Mm.
A computer isn't smart enough to realize and understand the distinction between the two.
Yeah, it might be possible in some languages that don't have synonyms. But my limited experience with languages, the less sophisticated languages tend to have more multiple distinct uses for the same word rather than fewer. Some Aboriginal language in Australia might well have 7 or 8 different uses for a word, whereas in English or Latin, there are only 2 or 3 different uses for that word, So I don't think, there might be a language out there that is largely feasible to consider a computer capable of identifying synonyms, in 99% of the instances or whatever. But yeah, it's like trying to ask a computer program to recognize sarcasm. It's just not in its capability. And I don't think that it's the sort of thing that we're ever going to be able to teach a computer. If you could invest a large enough library of all possible instances of sarcasm, then fine. But now that's not understanding sarcasm. That's basically information retrieval.
So when Google talks about phrase-based indexing, they say that certain phrases predict what a page is about. So if you have a page that deals with the President of the United States and you see phrases on the page, like White House or Rose Garden or
Oval Office. Yeah.
right. You those phrases predict that the page is about President of the United States. Well, Google has a patent that says they've indexed where all those phrases appear on the web. So they're not guessing. This page says executive or Speaker of the House or Rose Garden or Oval Office. So this page must be about the president. They're looking those phrases up.
Yeah, it's information retrieval.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not the same as just randomly inserting synonyms into a page. If Google doesn't have an index of those synonyms or a thesaurus or a dictionary where it looks those up, it's not going to guess them.
No.
They provide no value to the search engine.
Yeah, and what your accuracy would be next to nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's back to your original question. In that period, when I was first studying, and I found all these guys out there who I thought needed to be read and followed and heeded. I recently had to do a project for somebody that I was having to do some research on a technical issue, and like every other technical issue, you're going to find differing opinions.
Mm-hmm.
But it was amazing to me how some of the people, even folks who I have up until yesterday greatly valued their knowledge, were way off in left field on this topic. And it's not based upon my belief of how that particular technical issue is handled. It's based upon the facts of how that technical issue has to be handled. And that they're putting out stuff that's just flat wrong, 180 out. And wow, it was discouraging.
So I've been reading things from people other than SEOs, like people in user design or UX,
Mm-hmm.
like Jacob Nielsen and Jared Spool, who both often write about the same types of things and sometimes contradict each other. But when they do, they have good reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Like Jacob Nielsen might write at one point in time that web page visitors don't scroll down the page. And he wrote that in like 2002. He followed it up in 2007 with a statement that people do scroll now, that they've learned how,
Mm-hmm.
that they become used to web pages that are longer. Jared Spool wrote an article after the 2002 one from Jacob Nielsen that said, well, people will scroll as long as it doesn't look like they've reached the bottom of the page. If there's something like a horizontal line that goes from one side to the other that looks like the bottom of the page, they'll stop scrolling. So he said, stop putting horizontal lines on your pages like that, and people will continue to scroll.
Yeah, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And I've had people remove horizontal lines from bottoms of pages or what looked like the bottom of a page before, and it made a difference. So putting some of the user design tricks into practice actually is something SEOs do sometimes.
Oh, sure. Well, that's the thing that always, it kind of amuses me and frustrates me. And I've had some discussions with Kim Krausberg over this because she's heavily into usability and accessibility and design. And it's amusing to me that somebody like an SEO and a designer are so, they're loggerheads with each other when they each will benefit greatly from having some knowledge from the other. Like your example, knowing this in your design can definitely have some SEO impact. And it's just frustrating as hell to see people fighting with their designers and their designers fighting with the SEO. And I've seen a lot of instances just in the last couple of days where the IT guy who actually has to make some changes, the developer, based upon the SEO's input, is fighting it, pushing back on everything without any understanding of why and without any desire to know why. Just don't want to do it because that's not the way we've always done it. That's not the way I was taught to do it 11 years ago or whatever, and it's just counterproductive to everybody. I am not a designer. Okay. I know what I like, and that does not necessarily mean that there's anybody out there that's going to have similar likes on a page. So, I like to work with a designer, but it is difficult. It's to be cherished when you find one you can work with who is open-minded, or even better yet, already has some technical knowledge of the SEO reasons behind things. If you get that combination, nurture that one, because that's a relationship you don't ever want to break down.
I had the chance to teach somebody SEO who started out as a designer specializing in accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew a lot of the stuff already, but not the reasons why.
Mm-hmm.
Like why how a search engine crawls pages. He used to smack himself in the forehead and say, I should have thought of that.
Well, at least that's a sign he has an open mind, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing too. You and I would work on this stuff every day. We still have to put forth some effort to stay abreast of things, because things could be different today than they were last week in some regard. So somebody who has managed to pick up, a designer or a graphics illustrator who's managed to pick up some helpful knowledge over the last 4 or 5 years probably isn't up to date. And we both know SEOs who are practicing SEOs who aren't up to date. So it's an uphill battle to stay abreast of things. And
so one of the guys I'm working with is an in-house SEO. It's for a good-sized site. Actually, he manages about 15 or 16 sites, but he doesn't have continuous contact with other SEOs or conversations about the latest, newest, greatest things.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why I'm talking to him. Because this way he gets to ask me lots of questions about what's going on in the SEO world, what's new, how I feel about certain types of things.
And that can be rewarding to you right off the bat, because like I've got a couple of young new practitioners I spend a lot of time with, and it's just like, when you're teaching a subject to a classroom of students, you're going to learn your subject pretty well. So even if it's just one person, if you're mentoring somebody and they're asking you questions, often I've got to really think, well, my knee-jerk response to that would be this, but that's based upon information that's 4 years old. So let me go check something, make sure that's still valid, or let's see if that's changed. And I just recently had that on this project that I was doing some research on. I did learn something new, that what I thought I knew based upon 4 or 5 years ago was not 100% valid anymore. So it's a constant process, and we even just doing SEO to a website, we've always said it's not a project, it's a process. You don't go SEO a site, you keep SEOing your site because things change all the time. And unfortunately, people they either don't understand it or they don't believe it.
Right. How often should somebody do keyword research for the website?
Well, like David likes to say, it depends. Do you want to make money?
So you don't just do it once and then not
Nope.
do it again.
Nope.
Because the way people use words and language change. If you go to like a Google Trends site, look up a word, you can see how searcher interest changes over time for a certain term or phrase. I had one client who was involved in the financial aspects of home ownership. Had certain keyword phrases related to that they were looking at, and looked in Google Trends, and the words people were using had really dropped off at one point. From like 2004 on, they weren't anywhere near as used, or searchers weren't focusing upon those terms. It happens.
Yeah.
People refer to things differently. I think sometimes changes in public conversation and media, so on, bring about changes in the way people talk about things.
Sure. Yeah, just buzzwords get inserted into a conversation, and everybody starts repeating it. Pretty soon, it's trending. That's the popular way of referring to it. Like for me, for instance, the word orange has taken on a whole new meaning. And that's as close as I'm going to get to a political interruption today. No, but it's, for instance, as an example in our world, inbound marketing, 10 years ago, wasn't a thing. 20 years ago, it was a thing. It was a room full of telephone jockeys. But, in the digital world, inbound marketing wasn't a thing. And then one day it became a thing, and now it has become a large thing. The vernacular changes, and it overflows into the populace. So yeah, your keywords, they're not static; they're dynamic. Even the descriptors can change. Between things like which is more popular, buy or purchase, and even descriptors like that can change in terms of search.
I see some topics about the way we describe SEO disappear and come back to life from time to time. They get recycled.
Yep.
Like people talking about intent-based search. That seems to be one that comes back in cycles.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to introduce them to informational, transactional, navigational again.
Yeah. And it's always fun when somebody says, "Hey, I read this article, this new thing," and then you share an article from 2002 on the same topic.
So somebody wrote one of the tool makers had an article about TF-IDF recently. And it was something they said in the article that Google developed to understand the intent behind searches. It's like, okay. So I tweeted back, it's something that was around at least since 1972, way before there was a Google.
Mm-hmm. Or an internet as we know it.
Yeah. It's like latent semantic indexing came into being in 1989. Again, before the internet.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not boring.
It's true. And we're moving into the world of artificial intelligence, with whatever that may mean to search. I'm not exactly sure at this point. I think there's a lot of uncertainty regarding that.
I was chatting with a neurologist the other day who had an interesting definition of artificial intelligence. And it was based basically upon the definition of sentience, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And which, based upon his definition, AI is not possible. And I said, no, wait a minute. To me, it's much easier to imagine a computer being able to be taught to recognize itself as existing, which basically meets the definition of sentience, than it would be to get that computer to recognize the fact that you're being humorous or sarcastic or ironic in your statement. So we had this really interesting hour-long discussion, after which he left, well, thanks a lot. You totally destroyed my opinion. Now I don't know what the fuck I think. But I guess based upon what my feelings are from one day to another, I think that we're going to see in AI, we're going to see some fantastic abilities, probably to surpass those of the average human being in terms of something like logic. Certainly, basically, what is a computer? It's pure logic. But in terms of being able to recognize what is humor, what is sarcasm, or what is sad versus what is happy, I don't think we're ever going to actually see that 100%. We may get some approximation of it. I just don't think it's capable, that a machine is capable of learning that sort of nuance.
Some of the big breakthroughs have been things like learning how to play Go, learning how to play poker, beating somebody at Jeopardy.
Mm-hmm.
They're not necessarily things that show off any greater capacity to learn or imagine or understand. I mean, can a computer empathize with something?
No, exactly. Well, the early efforts to teach a computer to play chess, there is a finite number of potential chess gambits. And when it has a library of all of the potential moves and can determine what are the potential moves that exist on the board at this moment, it's pretty simple logic to choose the one that's successful for a computer. That's not reasoning. That's logic, but there's a difference, in my mind, there's a difference between logic and reasoning. And certainly in terms of building a stress strategy 5, 6, 7 moves out, a computer is capable of doing that. Something like Jeopardy. trying to fish in a huge corpus of data and find the most appropriate answer at any given point in time. That's something that's perfectly within the ability of a computer to accomplish. They're getting better, they're getting faster, but they're not getting human. Depending upon my mood, though, Bill, there are days when I wish that rather than computers becoming more human-like, the humans could become more computer-like. Maybe we could find some middle ground here.
I'm not sure. I mean, the world's going to be filled with more devices that have some limited aspect of intelligence or reasoning or thinking to them. We're heading closer every day to that Internet of Things, where everything's connected to some type of device. I've seen patents from Google involving robots learning how to grasp things from some knowledge bases in the cloud, so they can identify what things are, what they're perceiving, what those things are made of, how they should be picked up, how carefully they should be picked up. It's not reasoning necessarily, but it provides a way of thinking about how these devices might share a mind that's outside of themselves.
A hive mind type scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there are guys like Elon Musk would get all upset, and his pulse rate would go up. But it's not, to me, it concerns me for another reason. A more immediate cause for concern is as we get closer to the IoT, as we get closer to depending upon computer ability to perform so many functions, like the ability to even unlock our front door or answer our communication device. What happens if there's suddenly, for instance, a loss of power or an EMP or whatever that catastrophically takes all of the electronics out of the equation?
So Amazon delivers lots of packages to people, and they started a program to have people's doors unlocked for deliveries.
Yeah.
So that those deliveries would be safer. Who keeps us safe from Amazon coming through our front door?
Yeah.
I can understand their ignoring that potentially being a problem, but it bothers me.
Well, if someone can hack into Amazon and steal millions of bits of personal information, is it so out of the question to think that somebody could not hack into an individual bot that's delivering a package and cause it to not relock the door when it leaves, or to reopen the door and let them gain access? I mean, it's just, I'm sorry, these are things that need to be thought about. Ignoring problems doesn't make problems go away. And the fact that the problem doesn't yet exist, good Lord, think of all the problems that we're facing right now just on the internet that didn't exist a few short years ago. Not too many casinos would have been concerned 10 years ago about somebody hacking into their fish tank to steal all the credit card information of their high rollers. But it happened.
So I get a phone call Saturday from Walmart. No, it wasn't from Walmart. It was from my credit card, asking me if I had made a purchase online at Walmart, and I hadn't. So somebody got my credit card number and bought an iPhone at Walmart and set it up for in-store delivery. So
Now I have done that at Walmart, and they said the individual must have their credit card in hand, and they must show identification that they are the named individual on the card at the local Walmart.
yeah,
Because I ordered stuff to have my daughter pick it up, and I had to use her credit card in order for her to be able to pick it up.
there are stores that offer that can sign. You can sign somebody up as an authorized pickup person. They need to have their own ID.
Yeah.
That identifies them as a person who they say they are, who you've given authorization to. So I called the Walmart. I said, I didn't order that. Don't serve that. Don't give that to anybody.
Yeah.
And then I called the credit card. I figured I was better off calling the Walmart first, making sure they realize they shouldn't be giving that to anybody.
Well, hack attempts, like I say, hack attempts are increasing in quantity. But what I found encouraging was seeing that the depth to which those exploits were successful seems to be becoming a lot smaller. For those that I've come across so far, I'm only partially into my research, but for those that come across so far, more and more hack attempts are taking place, but they seem to be clamping down. The sites, the companies that are victimized seem to be clamping down on them quicker, catching them earlier. So they're not getting the personal results of 400 million people. They're getting them of 10,000 people out of them.
So they seem to be learning from them.
Yeah. And their security is tightening up, and they're able to respond faster and shut it down without shutting this. Amazon's not going to shut down their site, obviously, but they are able to clamp down on an individual invasion and stop it. So it's somewhat encouraging. Problem is, the guys that develop security are guys that were hacking a few years ago. There's always somebody out there who's just a little bit further down the learning curve, or a little bit smarter, a little bit faster. The better the hacks get, the better security gets, the better the hacks get.
And there are people sometimes willing to take greater risks, I guess.
Yeah, that too. Well, like for instance, this guy that tried to buy an iPhone with your credit card number, if Walmart, assuming when they made the purchase, they authorized themselves to pick it up, are they going to want to go in there and show their ID to pick up that iPhone, knowing that when you finally discover it on your bill that you're going to raise the question and they're going to have that on file? No. Is it going to be a stolen ID he's going to use? The security that we implement is becoming more difficult to overcome, yet they're finding ways to overcome it.
It made little sense for somebody to buy that and check off the thing saying they wanted in-store pickup.
Yeah. Yeah, you would think that they would have it delivered instead someplace, but to a dummy address, but who knows? And I wonder how many little exercises like that are just explorations too. They may have just been trying to do no more than, let's just find out if this credit card is still valid.
Right.
Hasn't been reported lost or stolen, hasn't been clamped down by the bank. If it's still valid, then we can go fill up the gas tank, something like that.
And of course, a card company told me they'd canceled the number. They are sending me a new card with a new number.
Oh,
Which,
glad you caught it before you ended up owning a $1,000 phone.
yeah.
That you'd never get to use.
I would have been really upset if I was a brand new owner of a phone that I don't need.
Yeah. Well, I got a call here about a week ago. My daughter was on the other side of the border, and she used a debit card to pull some cash out. And I got a call, a voicemail left by somebody who said that, we detected some like out of the ordinary activity, and put a hold on your card, so you need to call us and free it up. Which, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Now, if I was standing at a checkout counter someplace, unable to bring home my groceries because of it, I would probably not be as appreciative. But I appreciate the sentiment, that they're trying to protect our security. And that's nothing new. I mean, I've had that happen to me 6, 8, 10 years ago with credit cards. Or I had an instance where I was actually, I had a card, and my wife had a card, the same card number, same CVV code and everything. I was in Australia and she was in San Diego. And within a period of about an hour and a half, we both used the card. So they did the smart thing. They froze both of them, which meant I got to spend an extra night in Sydney because I couldn't get back on the airplane.
Oh, no.
But I had to pay cash at the hotel to boot. But so that one I was not very appreciative. But in retrospect, hey, I didn't need an extra $2,000 on my credit card if it had been stolen or something, So.
Yeah.
Well, we ate up an hour pretty quick.
Oh, we are.
Thin crowd today. Just you and me. Too bad.
Mm-hmm. Well, we took a couple weeks off there. I guess that makes sense. I guess I'll shut this down. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Doc.
Enjoyed it.
Good talking to you.
Same here.